Hello everyone, in today's video we'll be doing a comparison between Retell AI and VAPI. Now I've heard from a few people over these past few weeks that they were considering using Retell AI as a substitute for VAPI. And in today's video, I'll be giving a comprehensive comparison between the two platforms. We'll be discussing some core points that haven't necessarily been discussed in a video like this, including the most important pricing, as well as SIP trunking, latency, and a comparison between the two API frameworks. This video will aim to give you an unbiased comparison between the two so you can make an informed decision about which one to use. Now, to give a brief overview of both platforms, VAPI and Retell AI are both prominent platforms enabling both developers and business owners to create conversational agents utilizing AI. Both platforms leverage the three core principles for AI voice agents, namely speech to text, text to speech, and LLMs to deliver natural and efficient conversational agents to the user. VAPI, founded in 2020, is a versatile platform targeted towards developers for building real-time and customizable AI voice agents to deploy over the phone. And with Retell AI being 3 years younger, founded in 2023, has quickly gained traction also with its YC backing and recent seed funding round, attracting prominent investors like Alt Capital. But both these platforms are some of the leading platforms when it comes to making AI voice agents and integrating them with business to create really applicable AI agents that businesses can leverage to increase efficiency and reduce the need for manual labor. VAPI and Retell AI cater to all business types and needs with robust AI voice infrastructure tailored towards the needs of modern conversational AI agents. But enough talking, I wanted to jump into both platforms and deliver a comparison of both. Let's dive in. To start, we'll jump into the more senior platform, VAPI, and we'll go through the platform user interface and compare it with the newer Retell AI. Having a look over on VAPI, we have a multitude of different functions that the user can choose from and interact with, and therefore build their AI voice agent with. And to start, we have an overview tab, and this is the place where all your assistant's performances and metrics are stored, including call length, call analysis, the transcripts and the logs are stored for each of your calls. But before we can view those, we need to create our assistants first, and VAPI prompts the user or a newer user to create their first assistant. Now, we have a few options here to choose from when creating your first assistant, including 4 different templates we can use from: our appointment setup, more on the outbound side, the inbound Q&A, as well as the customer support on the inbound side, and other applications of voice AI, including game NPCs. We'll go through a blank template and create our assistant. The first thing you'll be prompted with is the assistant we just created, and a few key things to mention here are cost and latency. Now, cost in VAPI is variable depending on the input token size, the model you're using, the voice you're using, the transcriber you're using, and more. And the first thing we can do is obviously see what providers VAPI offers to a user to facilitate the LLM inferencing with AI voice agents. Now, you can see we have about a dozen different LLMs we can choose from, including VAPI's in-house LLM that you can facilitate with VAPI blocks, but we'll get back to that. We've got OpenAI, Together AI, Anyscale, OpenBrowser, Perplexity, Deep Infra, Grok, Anthropic, Google, XAI, inflection, and even you can bring your own custom LLM to the table. Now, the two most common LLMs commonly used in production, especially with my clients, is OpenAI, and in some cases Anthropic, and in other cases, very small percentage, Grok, due to the latency here. Typically, your Anthropic is going to be a higher latency with your 3 Opus and Sonnet and Haiku. But enough talking about the models and providers here. I want to jump into a bit more the specifics of VAPI and the versatility with setting up your own assistant. Now, we also have the option here to select a knowledge base, and we can see we can add a new file. Files can be PDFs, docs, which is good. I can choose a file and upload that as additional context to the AI that the LLM can draw from in conjunction with the system prompt. Moving over to the system prompt as well as the first message, we have the option here to type in our first message or leave it blank. Now, what this does is this will be the first spoken message that the AI will speak to the user if they pick up a call. If we're leaving it blank, we infer that the user speaks first. So here we can simply type our own first message. We can also include a system prompt message, and this can vary in length, but you'll note if I type in a system prompt that's relatively short here, cost is not increasing. However, with input token size in VAPI, if I paste it in a few more times, you'll see cost increases with LLM input. Something to note there. We also have the option of using a transcriber to transcribe the interaction between the user and the AI agent. And we have 4 different providers that we can choose from. We also have voice configuration here, where we can choose from, again, a dozen different voice providers, Play HD, Init, Deepgram, and so forth, as well as OpenAI's native voices, to which we can choose from and utilize on our AI agent. Moving down, we have some additional configurations that we can utilize also over the phone for our AI agent to be customized. And this includes background sounds. Now, background sounds are almost like ambience behind the call, and this has been added due to the lasting problem with these AI voice agents, which is latency. And these background sounds are there to mitigate the silence, that awkward silence between the user and the AI responding. So we have a few options, including office and default, which is just a static sort of sound. We have punctuation boundaries, filler injection, back channeling as well. So listening to the user to make it sound a bit more natural. Now, depending on the voice preset you're using, this can be very hit or miss with VAPI, but we also have speed, so the speed of the voice output here. These options are configurable based on the provider and voice you're using. If you notice, I go to 11 Labs, we have a lot more customizability when it comes to configuring the voice to your personal needs. Moving on to the functions. Now, VAPI is targeted towards developers, and this is done and facilitated through the utilization of tools, which we'll get to in just a moment. We've also got predefined functions that we can leverage, including ending the call and dialing the keypad. So if our AI voice agent runs into an IVR system, e.g. press 1 for this option, press 2 for that option, we can actually press those keys over the phone using an AI voice assistant, which is really cool. We also have the ability to forward the number, so transfer the call to a user or another agent over the phone as well. We've got end call phrases, custom functions, but we'll move on to advanced. We have some privacy settings within VAPI. Are we going to be HIPAA compliant? Do we want audio recordings? Do we want video recordings? And we have a speaking plan here. How long do we have the assistant to wait before speaking? Smart endpointing, punctuation, number of seconds of the call, stop speaking plan, including number of words, voice seconds, and a lot of different options when it comes to really fine-tuning and tweaking your agent within VAPI. We also have probably the most commonly used part in developing and integrating and deploying these AI voice agents, and that is messaging. So VAPI can communicate with our own server using a HTTP post request, and we can send a bunch of different server events, including the conversation update of the call, any function calls, the function call results, hang notifications, metadata, model output, transcript, and a lot of different options that we can send to a client SDK, or more commonly server messages to our own server, like our make scenario. We can also leave voice messages, end of call messages, idle messages, and so forth. We'll go over to analysis, and we can also send in conjunction with our end of call report that we may send to our server, e.g. a post-call action, a summary of the call where we're using prompts to do so. We can also do success evaluations, and we can also send structured data outputs as well in our end of call report. So a brief overview of creating an assistant in VAPI. As you can see, it is very versatile and has a lot of settings, which may be overwhelming for the newer user who's not so familiar with these different parts. Now that we've gone over the creation of a VAPI assistant and the different settings that we can choose from in VAPI, let's quickly jump over to Retell AI and do the same sort of comparison. And then after, we'll go through a bit more of the technical details, including importing phone numbers, SIP trunking, latency, knowledge bases, tools, function calls, and everything like that. Moving over to Retell AI from a platform perspective, you'll see it's vastly the same in terms of what our options are in the left-hand side. The configuration in terms of the user interface is pretty different, and especially this agent section is, I think, a lot more clean than this, where all your agents populate here and then you have the right side filled up with the settings. It particularly becomes a bit cluttering when you have a lot of these. So just off the back there, we have these all sorted into first name, and then we can go through these and configure the settings here. We'll start with the agent creation process. And again, on the left-hand side here, we have agents, knowledge bases, phone numbers, call history, billing, API keys, webhooks. When we create an agent, you'll be prompted with 3 different options here in Retell AI. And that is your single prompt agent, multi-prompt agent, and your custom LLM. Now, for those that don't know, the multi-prompt agent is similar to VAPI blocks, where we can sort of start to create these decision tree prompts, where based on specific input, we'll produce specific output. But for now, let's do a single prompt agent, similar to what we did in VAPI. From our single prompt, we have, again, similar, some options that we can choose from here, and the same goes for multi-prompt as well. But we'll start from blank and see how it looks. And already you can see the user interface here is vastly different to VAPI, where we have the system prompt here, the first message down here, and sort of the settings in more of a vertical display rather than a horizontal display here. But you'll see here, starting with our LLM options, we can choose from 2 different providers. So instead of a dozen here, we have 2. Really only the main ones people use and I use in production are going to be OpenAI and Anthropic. But we also have an option that's not listed here to use our own Retell custom LLM. We'll dive into the system prompt here, as well as the first message, similar to what we have here. Now, if I just copy our system prompt and taking note of our price here, it's a bit smaller than VAPI up here, as well as the latency here. If we're using GPT-4o mini, we're using cluster 0.12 cents a minute. as compared to 0.13, but we have multiple longer prompts here. Now, one thing to note here is the price in itself, in terms of just coming from a model perspective, is comparable to that of VAPI. Only what Retell does is you'll notice price does not change with LLM token input length. If I have a short one, same. And if I have longer ones, e.g. I have very complex agents that require a lot of prompting, I just pasted that in 100 times, you'll see the price does not change as well. So something of a benefit here as compared to your VAPI. So if I were to delete that, we got 12 cents. And if I pasted in a few more here, so a complex agent requiring a lot of logic, the price does increase with token input. But moving on, we have our first message here. We have 3 options. AI remains silent until the user speaks first. AI begins with a dynamic message, and AI begins with a defined begin message. What we can do here is change this down here with a defined begin message. We can also use a dynamic message. This is where we can specify any variables that we're passing into the model. So how it would work in VAPI is hi, how are you? So we're passing in a dynamic message where this variable changes from case to case, and we'll grab these variables from an external source, so our own server, or we define it beforehand. Moving on to the voice settings. Again, we have a similar array of different voices we can choose from, as well as custom voices, and we can search any community or voice clones from 11 Labs. So really a lot of voices we can choose from. Moving on to sort of what we did over on VAPI, we have knowledge base that we can add as well. If we go over to knowledge base, we can add the same PDF, docs, and so forth. But what's cool that I figured out earlier was these knowledge bases, you can actually add web page URLs for Retell AI to scrape for you automatically. So if I were to add my web page, Esplanade AI, save, and we have our sitemaps here that we can select, save, and we can actually auto sync the web page every 12 hours. So to scrape and update that knowledge base every 12 hours. So that is something to mention definitely, and which is pretty cool. We can also add text manually, and we can also, similar to VAPI, upload any files that we may want, including docs, PDFs, and so forth. With voices, we have a similar configuration to VAPI, including your background sounds. Only with Retell, we have a few more options to choose from. So that background ambience of the AI, including a coffee shop sort of ambience, convention hall, summer outdoor, mountain outdoor, static noise, call center. This is very similar to our office in VAPI. So a few more options to choose from the Retell side. We've got responsiveness. So how long will the AI respond after the turn has completed on the user's side, between 0 and 1. Interruption sensitivity. So this is similar to interruption thresholding. We've also got back channeling as well. We've got keywords, provide a custom list of keywords to include in our model's vocabulary. We've also got speech normalization here, converts text elements like numbers, currency into human-like spoken forms. So this is pretty cool when facilitating appointment bookings where we return dates. Instead of prompting it to speak a date, so example 28 November 2024 at this time, we'll speak it like tomorrow at this time. Transcript formatting, are we gonna format the transcript? We can do reminder messages here, pronunciation, and so forth. Call settings, we also have voicemail detection, where we can determine the end of call silence. We have max call duration here also, between 2 hours and 1 minute. VAPI's limit here is, I think, 1 hour, so we have an additional 1 hour here. We've got similar to analysis, where we can have some post-call data retrieval between text, select a Boolean or number values. We've got similar security settings, only we don't have options for HIPAA. This falls under data sensitivity anyway. And we've got something here called fallback voice ID. And this is for the reason that if you're using 11 Labs and their service goes down for, an hour, 2 hours, we have a voice provider and ID that we can fall back on if that does occur. So in terms of security, keeping the AI assistant live and in production, we've got fallback ID as well. But from the settings side, we have comparable settings and customization with VAPI. One thing to mention here is this testing side in Retell AI. Now in VAPI, we can talk with the assistant via a web call to test the assistant that we've just created, but we've also got this in Retell as well. So we have test audio similar to a web call, exactly the same, but we've also got test LLM in a chat-based format. If I were to test my agent.
Hello, this is your name from your company organization. How can I assist you today?
I don't know, how can you assist me?
That's okay. I'm here to help with whatever.
So you can see the text was showing on the screen. We can actually use SMS testing here as it's not as expensive as testing audio. You'll see if I talk with Ava, our assistant here, we don't have that transcription until we go into the call logs. Hello.
Hello. How can I assist you today?
I don't know. How can you assist me?
I can help you with a variety of tasks.
So we don't have the luxury of seeing directly on screen what's being said until we go to our call logs, where we have to go into the transcription. So this is a cool little feature by Retell AI in terms of testing at a lower rate. Another thing to mention here is that we can test our dynamic variables here. So in VAPI, for example, if I wanted to pass in dynamic variables, including, maybe the user's email that we're speaking in conversation, there's no real way of testing this until we connect it with our own server and initiate a call. So from a webhook side, we cannot test dynamic variables like we can do so in Retell. So if I enter the name here and my name value is Jonas, and we pass that variable into the system prompt here, tell the user's name to them to confirm or something like that, we'll save that. So I'm having a dynamic variable in the system prompt here, and I'm wanting to test that here. Save, test our agent.
Hi, Jonas. This is Sam from Talk AI. How's things?
There you go. So we have the name. We're able to test those, dynamic variables directly in a web call or SMS style format. So this is a cool feature that VAPI doesn't necessarily have, so definitely something to note there. From the agent creation side, we've gone through both platforms from transcribing, voice functions, advanced analysis on both sides. Very similar layout and very similar things, with an honorable mention from the Retell side here with this testing mode here, which is pretty cool. Now to get into the more technical details in terms of importing numbers, the ability to SIP trunk and things like that. We'll get into that now, and we'll start with VAPI. You'll see phone numbers and functions, which we might talk about, and blocks and squads. Let's start off with phone numbers. Now we have the ability in VAPI to use one of two providers, and that is Twilio and Vonage. To import your numbers, it's very easy. We use an authentication method here. We're using account SID, auth token, a label, and the correlated number within those accounts, similar to Vonage API and API secret, where we can import a phone number from only Twilio or Vonage into our account. Flipping over really quickly to Retell AI, we have a similar method where we can buy a new number, specify the area code, it's $2 a month. It's similar to VAPI as well. But one thing to really mention here, and this is potentially one of the biggest reasons why people are considering making the change to Retell AI, is this ability for SIP trunking. Now, this is great in terms of volume. The problem with Twilio and Vonage is if you're using 10,000 minutes plus a month, it starts to get very costly and less competitive to sell to those enterprise or bigger clients that have access to their own telephony that they're often paying a very low fee for. I've spoken to enterprise, they pay about 3 cents a minute for their own telephony, where if you're just limited to Twilio and Vonage, you're paying a bit more of a premium. So already here, the ability to SIP trunk, we have actually two methods of SIP trunking with Retell AI, and that's to use elastic SIP trunking, where we take a PBX system and port it over to the PSTN network. So from legacy phone systems over to cloud-based phone systems that natively offer those benefits, including analytics and everything like that. There's a second method that you can do through Retell, and that is direct SIP trunk calling, where you can call directly into your SIP number where your telephony provider doesn't necessarily support elastic SIP trunking. So that's where you can start to connect these very inexpensive and very, very cheap telephony providers to be really competitive when offering these AI voice systems to bigger companies and enterprise companies that are already utilizing call centers that use telephony systems that are very, very, very inexpensive. So it's a very big plus in terms of Retell AI here. Definitely something to consider if you're using a lot of minutes. Another thing to mention here is we have some advanced add-ons on the Retell side where we can actually verify our phone number so it's not being marked as spam. All we have to do is set up a business profile and so forth. So we have this option of spam remediation here where we can sort of circumnavigate being marked as spam if we're doing a lot of outbound calls. On the flip side, we can also brand our call as well. So using T-Mobile and AT&T or Verizon, we also have this idea of spam remediation. We can verify our phone number so the business name displays correctly on the call, as well as reducing the likelihood of being marked as spam. So a few more customizable features here in terms of importing phone number as compared to VAPI, where we're limited to Twilio and Vonage here. And you may want to consider something like this, especially if you're going to bigger organizations with these systems, or you are a larger enterprise client yourself and you're wanting to address some of these concerns. Before we wrap up the calling side of things in specific phone numbers, we will mention concurrency here. So by default, VAPI has a 10 call concurrency limit. Retell is actually 20 by default with option to increase concurrency as well. So we can adjust the limit here and create more seats for concurrent calls. Now with VAPI, you can increase concurrency as well. But you're paying $10 a month per extra seat. So if I wanted the 20 concurrent calls, paying an extra $100 a month. Where we can adjust the limit here, we're paying $8 a month. So it's cheaper in terms of calling and concurrent calls. So definitely a plus here on the Retell AI side of things. So we'll jump into another few technical aspects of both platforms here, so you have a more holistic understanding of both. Moving on to sort of the latency side of things, another core. Moving on to another consideration between the two platforms is latency. Obviously, latency is a big part to the realism of AI voice agents, and we'll do a split test between the same agents using the same LLMs and model and prompt between the two platforms to get a good comparison of the latency discrepancies between both platforms. We have 10-50 milliseconds with a web call. Over the phone, we're looking at about 1.5 seconds. The same in Retell AI is going to be about 13 to 14.50 for over the phone, but we'll give a fair comparison here and we'll test the agent via web call here for both agents here. I'll even insert the dynamic variable for the first message here, but we'll start off with VAPI first for a web call, and then you guys can decide what sounds better. We're using the same voices, so I'll make sure of that. Talk with assistant, so we're doing a web call here. Allow.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. Reason for the call is to showcase our outbound AI qualification agents. Do you mind running through 3 quick questions with me?
Sure.
Great. First question, what have you liked with what you've seen so far about AI voice agents?
I love the innovative tech behind them. I think it's a very exciting and tumultuous field. A lot of benefits to businesses and individuals.
Thanks for sharing that. Now, what don't you like about voice agents?
The latency.
Understood. Lastly, are you still interested in using these for your business? Got it? Lastly, are you still interested in using voice agents for your business?
Absolutely.
That's great to hear. Thanks for your time. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Hi, Don. This is Sam from Talk AI. How's things?
Good.
Great to hear. Reason for the call, Don, is to showcase our outbound qualification agents. Do you mind running through 3 quick questions with me?
Sure.
Perfect. First question. What have you liked with what you've seen so far about AI voice agents?
I love the innovative tech behind it. I think it's a very tumultuous field and has a lot of benefits for increasing business efficiency.
That's great to hear. Now, flipping the question, what don't you like about voice agents?
The latency.
Understood. Lastly, are you still interested in using these for your business?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time, Don. Someone from our team will follow up with you soon.
So there you go. 2 side-by-side comparison, looking to gauge the latency. Now, latency is very variable depending on your function calls, call settings, prompt size, the model, the voice. A lot of considerations to have when trying to reduce latency. To sort of shift gears here into what makes AI voice agent platforms as a whole really unique and powerful so that you can offer these to businesses is function calling and tool calling that we can utilize in our AI agents, to which they can invoke during the call, after the call, before the call, and so forth, to really make these applicable to businesses. So we'll jump over to VAPI tools here, and tools are functions you can make that can be utilized by your assistants in calls. We can connect in VAPI external automation tools like Make, GHL, and custom tools. To create a tool in VAPI is quite straightforward. We have 3 options: custom tool, make, go high level, and we each have server URLs associated with them. This is an endpoint that our agent can look to perform a function's logic, and we can have our own URL as a custom endpoint. So this may be your own code base that you can point to facilitate function logic. Similarly for Make and GHL, this utilizes the same concept as well. We'll say we're going with Make. The creation of tools in VAPI is quite straightforward. They don't give you sort of templates that you can use from, but they make it very easy from a user interface side to create a tool, where we first start with our tool schema. So what properties are we sending to our server, and the description of those properties. So if I were building an SMS tool, we can collect the name over the phone. We can also collect a user's mobile. We have the option to mark any properties as required values, meaning these have to be collected for the tool to be invoked. We can name our tool whatever we want, and then our tools will be listed here, all in a modular sort of system that we can utilize in our assistance function tab, e.g. our SMS tool that we can connect up with our agent, and then in the model, we can use language specific invocation of a tool, invoke the SMS function, and because our function is connected there and our function is connected to an external server, this function will be called in there. So function creating, or tool creating as it's known in VAPI, is very straightforward and very easy to do. Moving over to Retell AI, you can see a similar approach here. In functions, we don't have a separate tab here for your functions, but we can click into the agent under functions in the middle here, add. And similar to VAPI, we have pre-built functions and call transfer, press digit. Remember, in VAPI, we have some predefined functions. So tick there, we have the same sort of as VAPI, And we also have this custom functions thing. So similar to the tool building in VAPI, we can build our own custom function, name, description, URL, and then the parameters also that we can include in our schema to be sent to our own server. So this could be make, GHL, or anything like that. What's cool here is that we also have the ability to have some additional predefined functions, including check calendar availability and booking the calendar on cal.com. So Retell's partnered with cal.com, so we have nice predefined functions here where all we have to do is put API key, event type ID, and then the same with booking. So 2 additional pre-built functions here that we can draw on, but largely custom functions are the same. Moving on, we have this idea of multi-prompt agents where we can start to build out these decision tree frameworks for specific agents. We can create new states. Starting state is first prompt. We can connect it to other modules, and this is what we mean by these multi-turn chat points. So if I had asked them if they want to proceed, so we have like a greeting state. We can invoke tools in this state as well. But if we had this first one and then the second one, and we create a new state here, for example, and we have our edge here, the condition to transfer. So we can add a condition here, like if user says yes, go to this. If user says no, go to this pathway. Pretty much the same as what's known as blocks in VAPI. We can create a new blocks workflow, and we can also start to build out a decision tree framework for specific agents. We can add steps. So similar conversation, tool call, and workflow, very similar here. So both have that functionality. Another thing that we can do in VAPI is this thing called squads, where we can start to route between different agents and build a squad framework. I just did a video on that recently, so check that out if you haven't. So squads is, again, sort of a similar workflow tool that we can utilize to transition between different agents and so forth. Really cool feature when managing complex workflows. Now look, I could spend hours going through each platform, so we'll move on to the final point of the comparison here, and that's going to be the API frameworks of both. Something that hasn't necessarily been talked about in videos here, and sort of making a comparison between our Retell AI API reference as well as our VAPI API reference. Now off the bat, VAPI is targeted towards, and they've been explicit about this, targeted towards developers, so it would make sense that their API framework is going to be a bit more robust than Retell, but we'll have a look into it. Off the face here, our API is modular in a sense that from VAPI side, we have 10 different modules pertaining to calls, assistants, phone numbers, squads, blocks, tools, and files, as well as analytics, logs, and webhooks that we can go through and utilize in our own sort of applications, or directly using CURL here. So we have examples of using Go, Python, TypeScript for all API references here. Retell AI follows a similar modular approach. We have about 8 different modules here, so to speak. So calling, creating phone calls, LLMs, which we can touch on, agents, phone numbers, knowledge base, voice, account, custom telephony, custom LLMs, and then some deprecated V1 calls as well. Again, following a similar display here, offering API references in JavaScript, Python, CURL, PHP, Go, Java, similar to VAPI really. One thing to note here on VAPI's API references is we can directly test API calls in their documentation here as well. This is where we can select our endpoints that we're wanting to test, submit our credentials that we find here in our API keys, paste that in there, and then include any parameters and test in here. With Retell, we can do the same, only we have to spec it here. So this is an older model. So VAPI used to have this structure in terms of the API endpoints. I believe this is a Mintify, Fly structure here. So we can send API requests, test here, put our authorization, spec the body, put the parameters in here. Only VAPI is different, that we can do it in a more formatted and nicer way. One thing to mention here is VAPI offers client server SDKs, including your web SDKs and your server SDKs in Python, TypeScript, Java, Ruby, C+, and Go. Retell AI does offer SDKs only for Node and Python, so not as robust in the languages. Everything else is largely the same. Making note of the difference here in custom telephony, where we can import our own phone numbers, registering the phone call. We can also use an LLM WebSocket to bring in our own custom LLM, which I mentioned earlier. Another thing to mention here is creating a Retell LLM. So this is Retell's LLM, where we can edit a custom LLM, so GPT or Claude, change the model temperature, add tool calls, general prompt, and states. Now, states is something that's pretty new and unique to Retell AI. So these LLM states, we can actually define where to move based on the state of the user in our LLM processing. So you should use these states if you encounter issues with single prompting, where tools or functions are triggered unexpectedly, flows complex for a single prompt, and so forth. So we have these different states that we can route to dependent on input and produce different output, all within one agent. And VAPI does simulate this with squads. So we can route to squads based on user inputs and things like that. Again, a lot of things to go through here, but I think we covered a lot today in terms of the discrepancies and comparison between the two platforms. As a whole, I think both platforms are excellent. If you're wanting me to make a few more videos on the Retell platforms, diving deep into creating state-based agents, incorporating functions, bringing our own telephony systems and so forth into Retell, drop a comment below, because I would be interested in creating videos on that also. If you're looking for a few more videos on the VAPI side, I've got plenty of VAPI videos. It's the main platforms I've used in the past. Recently, I'm interchanging between both for specific applications. I do think, you know, at the end of the day, it's up to you on which one you want to use. As far as this video goes, I hope this gives a good comparison on both platforms and gives you an idea on where you sit in terms of knowing what platform to use if you're starting out as a developer or a business owner and so forth. But that is it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this video, leave a comment below. And again, if you're looking for some more videos on the Retell side, do drop a comment below. If you're looking for some videos on VAPI, I've got a bunch of them on my channel, so subscribe and check those out. If you're looking to stay ahead of the AI curve, be sure to subscribe. We're almost at 1,000 now, nearing the end of the year, so do click that subscribe button if you're not so already. I upload weekly. Until next week.